Hi guys, welcome to another video. So this is the video describing the character traits and the personality of the Aquarius sign in astrology. Just like a quick warning, this will probably be quite a long video. All my videos are long, but again, this one's probably going to be pretty long. There's a lot I have to say because Aquarius is actually a fairly complicated sign. So they're like the wild child of the zodiac, so there's a lot to say. Wrote like almost a half page full of notes for this video, and I've already written my notes for the Pisces video, which is like literally a full page, but we'll get to that obviously in the video after this one. So anyway, Aquarius. So I already kind of said it really. Aquarius is the wild child of the zodiac. They are eccentric, they're unique, they do not want to follow the beaten track, they want to be completely in like individualistic, but not in the sense of being selfish. They just want to not listen to anyone, not take orders from anyone. They're rebellious. They are kind of, I'll do what I want to do only. If you tell them to do something, well, actually, rather, if you tell them not to do something, they will do it anyway. In fact, they'll want to do it more because they like to rebel. Don't like authority, don't like to be tied down, they like freedom, all of that. So that's the main essence of Aquarius, but obviously I'll go into it in a lot more detail here in this video. So Aquarius is the fixed air sign. So the symbolism as a real world example that I would use for describing Aquarius, obviously if you saw my Gemini video, I described them as a tornado because they're the mutable air sign. The air's going in all directions, haphazard, all of that. And Libra video, if you watch that, they're the cardinal air sign, so I describe them as a hurricane sort of stereotype to their personality as a real world symbolism, real world example. But Aquarius here, so Aquarius is the fixed air mode, so they're static, they don't move, they don't change, they're stubborn because they're the fixed polarity, the fixed mode. So real world example for Aquarius is just normal air, air in its natural form that's static. It's basically breathable air. It's the air that we breathe every second of our lives in order to, stay alive, basically. The air we breathe in order to survive. Like I'm sat in this room right now, of course, I'm breathing in air to stay alive. And that is basically Aquarius. They are static air. The air's not moving because they're the fixed mode, but it is constantly present as well because they are the fixed mode. So I feel like static air is a good way to describe it, or just like the background of this video is just, as you can tell, a picture of the sky because it represents air, but it's not like a picture of movable air that I could use, like a tornado or a hurricane, because the air's not movable with Aquarius. That's the point, because they are the fixed sign for air, the fixed mode for air. So I just got a sky picture as my background here for this video because obviously it's meant to signify the air, but it's air that's just hanging there. It's not moving because it's static. Of course, air does still move in the real world to an extent. It's not completely still like Earth, like the ground that you walk on, but that's kind of how I tried to symbolize it here. So, a few key words that I've got for Aquarius then. So, eccentricity is definitely a key word. They are very eccentric. Rebellious is a key word, definitely. Uniqueness. So the thing with Aquarius is that there's kind of a paradox to their character because they are unique and they're eccentric. They march to the beat of their own drum. They want to do things their own way, charge their own path in life. They do not want to listen to others' opinions or advice, but they also want to be part of a group of people. They want to integrate as part of a group because they are opposite to Leo. And obviously, Leo is all about individualism and ego and the self and what that represents. Like they develop their own self character. And Aquarius is the opposite. They're the opposition to Leo in the zodiac. So Aquarius is more about integration. So they integrate. So it's like self versus the rest of the world. Leo represents that very personal self, and Aquarius is representing the rest of the people, the rest of the world. So it's less about themselves and their own identity, and it's more about everyone else that they're surrounding themselves by, like the rest of the world, if you kind of get what I'm trying to say here. So It's like they do have a slight breakdown of their ego. The sun is debilitated or detrimented, whatever you want to describe it as, in their sign. So it's not actually fallen completely like it is in Libra, but the sun is still in a debilitated position, a detrimented position in the sign of Aquarius. So they do have a slight breakdown of the ego, and that's because they are in opposition to the sign of Leo, which of course is where the sun is dignified because the sun rules Leo. So where they're all about individualism, and the self aspect in like a group, they are focused on themselves and how they fit in. Aquarius is about the group. So they're almost disconnected from their own identity and their own ego in a certain sense. I guess you could say they're a lot more sort of about the rest of the group, everyone else in the group, every other person in the group. They don't focus really on themselves, especially when they're like casually socializing. They're kind of not focusing on themselves in like a social situation. They're focusing on everyone else in the group. But something I'll go on to later in this video is that Aquarius is very sort of impersonal in their approach. So it's not like they're focusing on one person intimately in the group setting. So whereas the Leo would be all about, they're obviously socializing, but they want all the attention. They want to be the star of the show. They're kind of like, they're thinking all of the time about themselves and not really about their surroundings and the rest of the people around them in the group in a social situation, because obviously their opposition is Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign which is focusing more on everyone else, every other person in the group, and not on themselves. They kind of blend into the crowds, to the scene that they're in. But it's not like they're focusing intimately on the other people around them on a one-on-one setting with one other person. It's more in a very broad-minded perspective. It's very see the bigger picture, innovative sort of cognition and thinking that they have. So they don't approach the group as like one person, and they're communicating and getting deeply like emotional and intimately connected with one person in the group, and they focus on that person like very deeply and possessively, which is definitely a lot more Scorpio and Taurus. The Aquarius is more about the group, but about the whole world as a whole, if you like. They're on a very grand scale. Aquarius is very much like they think they hate like pollution, they hate damaging the climate, damaging the planet, but they hate it because they are knowing that later on down the line, our children are going to have to live in a world that is full of air pollution, full of noise, light pollution. It's not going to be a nice society for our kids to grow up in. So they're thinking about it in that sense, and that's why what's happening in the world right now is going to irritate them, it's going to annoy them, but it's not even so much because it's going to affect them directly. They get more annoyed about things that are going to affect people in the future, even if it's not connected to them personally at all. That's kind of what will get them worked up. We'll get into that a little bit more when I describe Mars and Aquarius, but Leo's going to be defensive and mad about things that are going to personally affect them because they are about the self aspect. Aquarius will get mad for the opposite reasons. They're going to get mad if something is affecting the whole group, like the hierarchy of the entire group, the people, humanity at large in general. Anything that's going to affect humanity is going to really tick off and annoy Aquarius, which is obviously opposite to Leo, which is going to be if it affects them, it's a problem. Aquarius is like, they don't really even mind so much if it affects them because they are emotionally detached. It's more they care if it affects humanity in general. They also are similar to Libra in the sense that they are kind of quite serious. They have strong Saturn presence, which we'll get into, and so does Libra, because Libra exalts, in other words, strengthens the planet Saturn. So they both have serious sort of Sagittarian sort of energy to them, and they both care a lot about justice and fairness, but Libra's more in the sense of the principle of justice and fairness. Aquarius is more in the actual execution of the justice and fairness and the sort of like overseeing in a more passive way that the justice has actually been served in a certain situation, whereas Libra will strive to be the one who is making justice be served. The Aquarius is the one who will observe that justice has been served after the fact, if you try and get what difference I'm trying to explain between those two right now. So yeah, Aquarius are major feet, so they are definitely the least emotional sign of the zodiac. Because they are air, which is already the least emotional element, and because they're the fixed mode for air, they're also the most stubborn and least adaptable, the least movable, and the least changeable manifestation of air energy as a soul element. So those two combined obviously add up to a person who is actually very emotionally detached. Of course, not all of them. This is kind of like a broad overview. Not all Aquarius people are going to be completely emotionally detached. Some actually are surprisingly highly emotional, but a major theme is that they have this emotional detachment. They have almost an entirely logical approach to life. They focus a lot on purely the logical side of things. In a sense, they're almost opposite in their thinking to water signs in that sense, where they listen to their intuition and their heart over logic and over everything else. Aquarius is they do not listen to their feelings; they only listen to the facts and what's known to be a fact of the matter. They do not think about how it might make them feel. They don't think about how it might make the other person feel, and they don't lack empathy at all because they are caring, but they do kind of think only logically inclined. They are very, very one track thinking, logically inclined. As soon as you bring up emotions, they will completely not know what to say anymore. Their whole thought processes will just be they'll hit pause on their thought processing and their communication immediately as soon as you bring up anything emotional, because they just have no idea how to respond to anything emotional. They are very almost scientifically minded as well, which is what I was trying to explain. They are very like almost scientifically minded. Like science is a very by the book. These are the facts of the situation, and they do that in a very logical sense. Like they say it how it is, but they do it in a very like logical, analytical sort of way. But it's impersonal, but it's also very non-judgmental. So it's not analytical like Mercury, which is Gemini and Virgo, especially Virgo in the judgmental sense. It isn't like that. It's analytical more as in they're just trying to figure out how things work. They like it's like their brain, the cogs of their brain are always moving, they're always working. They're trying to think logically, how is this working out? So, as I say, I kind of personally would describe it as like scientifically minded. Now, they are ruled by the planet Uranus, and the whole character of Uranus is that it's innovation, it's revolution, defying authority. In a sense, you could say that it's the enemy to Saturn because basically the rules and the respect for authority that Capricorn kind of symbolizes as a sign. Aquarius, they come one after Capricorn, obviously, and all of those values of respect and authority, controlling sort of, I want the worldly success that Capricorn stands for with Saturn and all of that, Saturnian energy. Aquarius is the rebel. They're the rebel. They will defy Capricorn. They'll be like the control that Capricorn wants to impose on their life and make them live by the beaten track, live by society's rules and expectations. And Capricorn set them very, very grounded and earthly, and they're like, this is exactly what everyone should do in their life. Aquarius is kind of the enemy to Capricorn in a certain sense, that they're like, no way, I am not listening to society's wants, needs, expectations that people have of me. They do not care less. And actually, the more that you try and put them in a bubble and control them, the more that they're going to rebel and innovate and want society to move on and be almost liberal and free-minded. They don't want society to listen to Capricorn and the rules and the restrictions that they have imposed. They do not do that. They are very much about rebelling against all these societal limitations, if you kind of get what I'm trying to say. Yeah, however, there is a paradox again with Aquarius because they're ruled by two planets. So the major ruler in New Age astrology is Uranus, but they are also co-ruled by Saturn as well, which they actually share with Capricorn. So whilst I have just said that they're kind of enemies to Capricorn and opposite because they want to defy all the rules and regulations that society imposes that Capricorn strengthens and represents in a certain sense, they also are ruled by that planet of Saturn, the same as Capricorn, so they also want to impose the rules and the restrictions of society. But then Uranus comes along and wants to reject Saturn and the rules that Saturn is imposing. So there is a paradox within the Aquarius character. Now, obviously, Saturn is only the mild co-ruler of Aquarius, so they do have some Saturnian energy, which they have in common with Capricorn, but their major ruler, which has the most influence on them, is Uranus. So they are more rebellious than rule followers. They're more of like a leader against like restrictions and rules and society's like expectations rather than a follower of those rules and societal expectations. But they do kind of have both, so in a sense they could sometimes indulge their more Saturnian side and become a bit more like a Capricorn, just an air version of a Capricorn rather than an earth version of a Capricorn. And then they could be like a Saturnian Aquarius where they're like following society's rules. Like maybe in a job, obviously they need to have respect for the manager. So in that case, they can indulge the more Saturnian side. It is a bit more conservative and traditional and by the book. Even if their Uranus side is then not happy with them following like orders that the manager's given them, they will still follow them respectfully because they also have the Saturnian side to them too. So yeah, I guess that they are kind of like an opposition in that sense. Although I do think that they channel the serious, responsible sort of side that they have of them, afforded to them by the Saturn influence. They channel it more into being very serious and determined about the groundbreaking sort of societal innovation that they want to achieve. So it's almost like they're serious about the fact that they want to break the rules and they want to lead others. So they channel this Saturn seriousness and like discipline into, following what Uranus wants them to do in a sense. They manage to combine the two, whereas they use Saturn's determination and seriousness, but they channel it into following what Uranus wants them to do, which is to be shocking and innovative, groundbreaking, and leading humanity toward the new age, toward innovation, if you kind of understand what I'm trying to say. So they use that Saturn seriousness, but they channel it into Uranian activities, which are these rebel sort of urges. So it's almost kind of like they're a rebel, but they have a cause. So they're not, the saying rebel without a cause. They are a rebel, but they have a cause. They're with a cause. They're not without a cause. So they're purposeful in the fact that they're rebels. They're not like just all over the place rebels, disrespectful for society. They have a purpose behind it. They have a reason behind it, and they're serious and dedicated about it. So I think that's how they use the Saturn energy more than just being a follower like Capricorn, because that really is opposite to most of what the Aquarius character would stand for, is to be a follower. That's probably the worst thing that they could possibly imagine if you would ask an Aquarius person. Now Aquarius does have this side to them. They are an air sign, so they do have they are almost kind of very ungrounded and they're very dreamy. They have this dreamy side to them. Although this is obviously somewhat like offset by the fact that Saturn as their co-ruler, Saturn is an Earth planet and they are quite aware of like the real world, even though obviously they're an air sign, they're not Earth at all, they're not Capricorn. Saturn does kind of afford this like down to earth serious tone anyway. So they do kind of have this, but at the same time they are an air sign, they're obviously very ungrounded because they're an air sign. So they are very dreamy and ungrounded from time to time. Now, compared to the other air signs, the Gemini and the Libra, then, they are definitely the most stable air sign. They are the most reliable air sign because they are the one who is fixing this air energy. So especially like compared to the Gemini. I feel like they're very similar to Gemini, but they are obviously more innovative and aggressive about that humanitarian innovation that they stand for. Another difference is that Gemini is more sort of um, restless and rebellious, but in a sort of they just want to communicate all the time. They cannot stay in one place. I don't want to say they're more flaky, but they do kind of need to move a lot more because they are the mutable air sign and they're kind of the natural continuation of air. Of course, this isn't the actual order the zodiac goes in, but if you think of it more in a metaphorical sense, it's meant to be cardinal, fixed, and mutable order. So in that sense, you would have Libra, which has given birth to this air energy, which signifies logic, mental processes, cognition, ideas, rejection of emotion and intuition, only fact-based mentality, this sort of thing. But what you could say, like obviously Libra would coordinate that. Aquarius will like adapt that and fix it as like would not adapt. They'll ground it, they'll give it more of a purpose and a reason for existing. But then obviously the natural continuation of that is the mutable mode, which is Gemini. So they represent this more sort of fast fluctuating, changeable sort of energy. So Aquarius is the most reliable, they're the least restless. Because they think a lot like all the air signs, they can stress themselves out quite easily. They overthink quite a lot, I think, as well, for that reason. They are very much in their heads. They are not at all grounded in their physical body. They're opposite to earth signs. So they are not very present and grounded in their physical body. They're all about their minds. They're all kind of always in their head, and they're stubborn about staying in their head all the time too, because they're the fixed mode. Another thing is that they are Aquarius, then they are the most reliable air sign. However, they do have a fear of commitment and they have a strong desire for freedom. They are freedom seeking. Like Gemini and Sagittarius, Aquarius is also another sign which is majorly freedom loving. And they, unlike like the Taurus and the Scorpio, for example, who want to be sort of controlling in a certain sense, and they want to be possessive, especially in a romantic relationship. Aquarius is another one of those signs who will absolutely hate possessive partners in relationships because they have such a strong desire for freedom. And this is the same with the Gemini and the Sagittarius. They're kind of the three I think which are the most scared of commitment because they are the most freedom loving. Now, getting on to that then, Venus in Aquarius. Now, my personal birth chart actually has my Venus in Aquarius, so I feel like I know this placement quite well because that is my Venus placement. So basically, Venus Aquarius, it's quite strange. Of course, they're in opposition to Leo. So Venus Leo, they're very dramatic. They're very openly romantic. They propose in like a really spectacular, showy sort of way. They like to show off their lover. They want to, go, oh, look, I've got the most beautiful lover in the world. Aquarius is in opposition to that. They're opposite. So Venus Aquarius, it's more like they have a very liberal romantic attitude, and lovers and friends to them are indistinguishable for the most part. So it's almost like Venus Aquarius, again, Aquarius is just strange in general. That's another key word you could just use to describe the Aquarius sign in general, is that they're just strange. They're a bit weird and eccentric. So it's like, and they love that they're like that. They actually really want to be like that. So with Venus and Aquarius, they're kind of like they will treat their romantic interest like a friend, like or any other friends that they would have in their social circle. And all air signs have very big social circles, by the way, because air signs like to make a lot of friends because they're very sociable, but they don't get deeply committed into each individual friendship. They like to flirt around with every friend. So that's kind of why they have such big friendship groups, because it's like as soon as one friend gets too like emotionally connected to them, they pull away and then they go on to the next friend and spend some time communicating with them because they're primarily logical and intellectual. This is just air in general, especially with Aquarius. They are very, very logical and they are not at all emotional. So they're the same with romantic relationships. Obviously, they'll only have one romantic partner, unlike their friendship groups, but they will treat them the same way. They'll just be like, they'll treat everyone as a friend. So it's kind of like they're not going to be overly romantic in the stereotypical sense because they don't want to follow society's rules and expectations in any area of their life, including romantically. So they're not going to be typically romantic. They're not going to be hugging and kissing. They're not going to be showing off their lover with pride and ego like Venus in Aries or Leo would. They're going to treat them as their equal. Their lover will be their equal. Their lover will be their friend. They will want a lot of freedom in the relationship, so they will not mind if they don't live with their lover and don't see them every day. They're actually probably going to be quite good at keeping a long distance relationship intact for a long time. And similar with Sagittarius and Gemini as well, because they like freedom, so they quite naturally understand the idea that their partner might need some personal space and freedom too. And they don't take that as a sign of lack of commitment or disloyalty because they need that themselves. They're very willing to give that to their partner in return. But that's Venus Aquarius. Mars Aquarius. Okay, so Aquarius, they are a decently energetic sign. I would say they're less energetic than the Gemini, but they are definitely more energetic than the Libra because Libra directly weakens, or if you like, debilitates, detriments Mars because they are in opposition to Aries, which obviously is ruled by Mars. But Aquarius, they have no direct interactions with Mars, and neither does Gemini. But I feel like Gemini is more energetic than Aquarius because they are more movable, as I say. They're kind of, they're a tornado style. They're kind of moving around all the time. So they are kind of more energetic than Aquarius just because they are more changeable. Like, literally, a chameleon is a word I could use to describe Gemini and Pisces, especially. They're the two most adaptable signs. They're literally chameleons that will change colours a billion times a day. Like within a second, they can switch different personalities like that. Just like with a click of their fingers, they're a completely new person, temporarily. But obviously, Aquarius isn't like that. Aquarius is very, even though they're air, they are quite steadfast because they are the fixed mode. So although they are air, they are more consistent. So that's kind of another thing I'll say that there's a difference between them. And they're less adaptable than the Libra too, because Libra is cardinal, which is still somewhat adaptable. Obviously not as much as the mutable mode, but cardinal is somewhat adaptable still. But of course, fixed is fixed, there's nothing else you can say. So Aquarius is the most steadfast. They are the most sort of, they're less, they're very open-minded because they're humanitarian, but they are sort of, their opinions, they're the most confident in their opinions. They're the least flexible with change in their opinions, I would say. Um, they are passionate and aggressive about leading others in like a revolution, a rebellion, or a strike, for example. So if you have your Mars in Aquarius, you're gonna have like the most sort of aggressive side of Aquarius highlighted strongly in your personality. So if your Mars is in Aquarius, you're going to be aggressive toward Aquarian ideals and Aquarian objectives, which are innovation, as I say, and leading society in rebellion, strikes, revolution, uproar in a certain sense. You're going to do it with aggression, but also passion and energy if your Mars is in Aquarius. You're going to have this non-judgmental and inclusive attitude. Aquarius in general is very, very accepting. They're tolerant to the extreme of other people. Whereas I feel like Leo, their opposition, Leo, because they have such a strong idea of themselves being the best person in the world, they kind of have this set sort of code of conduct, what they expect other people to fulfill. They expect other people to sort of be in tune with the ideals they have in their mind as to how people should act. But obviously, the opposition here, Aquarius is very inclusive. They are tolerant to the extreme, but it means they're very, very non judgmental, despite them being so analytical and logical, and they're filtering everything through their logical, rational mindset. They are still, at the same time as doing that, they are still very non judgmental and inclusive, and they're very caring in the sense that they're humanitarian, not emotionally at all, but they have this very inclusive attitude. They care a lot about humanity in general, and they know that everyone's different. So all backgrounds. It doesn't matter what happened in your past in your life. Doesn't matter your ethnic background. It doesn't matter your sexual orientation. It doesn't matter about gender, class, what you've achieved in your life, anything like this. And I really like people like that. Because my Venus is in Aquarius, I am attracted to that in a person. Not even necessarily romantically. I'm just drawn to people who are very liberal and very accepting and tolerant. I think part of that's also because of my Pisces sun. So that's kind of the whole ethos of Aquarius. They're very inclusive. Now the sun is detrimented, or if you like, debilitated in Aquarius. So it's not a very good placement, actually, to be honest, to have your sun in Aquarius. So to be in Aquarius and have your sun in that sign, it's not a great placement because your sun is weakened, so your ego's not very strong. But as I say, Aquarius is about the group and not so much about the Leo type of vibe, which is the self and all about me. Aquarius is the opposite, as I say. So they care about the group. They don't care about themselves as much as the group. Of course, they do still respect themselves, and they do kind of think that they are intellectually superior to any other person, which is a downside to Aquarius. But they still are not egocentric as much as Leo, obviously. They don't care so much. They're less focused inwards on themselves and more focused on the world in general. Um, Now, of course, as I said before, a difference between the sun and the moon is that the sun is a more superficial, ego-driven sort of personality. It's who you are, but it's more, well, actually, it's not really who you are. The difference is that the sun is what you're striving to become in this lifetime, in this world, if you like. The moon is kind of what you are already innately on the inside at your core. Like your soul is your moon. Like what your soul already is your moon. Your sun is kind of not traits that you naturally have necessarily. It's more what you strive to pick up on in your lifetime. So your sun is kind of more like what you want to achieve, what traits you want to integrate into your personality as a whole as you are evolving as a person in this lifetime. But your moon is kind of what you already have. It's effortless. You don't need to try to be your moon because you already are your moon. So it's kind of like what you want to be and you want to try consciously and hard to be. You have to kind of act like your sun, but your moon is what you already are. You don't need to try, it just comes naturally to you. So, to have your sun in Aquarius, you're going to be less emotionally closed off than if your moon is in Aquarius, because as I say, your sun Aquarius is kind of a shallow thing because it's the sun. So, although it is your personality and your character, it is more about what you're striving to look like to other people. It's more what your ego's tied up with. So they still have deeper emotions, especially because if your moon is not Aquarius as well as your sun, and it's only your sun that's Aquarius, of course it will depend on how emotional your moon sign is as to how willing you are to be open about discussing emotions. So, obviously, Aquarius sun, you're not going to be so dry and I guess you could say cold-hearted and closed off with emotions. You're not going to be like that at your core, if your moon is a sign that's not Aquarius, you're going to be like, you don't want to show that you are at all tied to your emotions because you want to be entirely logical and scientifically minded because that's where your ego is tied up with. So if your sun is Aquarius, you're going to avoid emotion. Yeah, as I say, you're going to avoid emotion with you're expressing to people in general. But if your moon is Aquarius, as I say, your moon is the deeper inner core of you. So if your moon's Aquarius, you will literally just not have emotions. Of course, you will technically have emotions, but you will be very, very more innately closed off. You're going to be very restrictive of emotions. You're going to use this Saturn principle of constriction and making everything smaller, as I said in the Capricorn video, and you will apply it to emotions. So you will be completely closed off. If people come to you and raise a topic that's emotional, in any way, shape, or form. If your moon is Aquarius, you will be completely emotionally closed off. At your deep inner core and your soul, you're going to be very emotionally aloof. Not always a bad thing, but you will be very, very stuck with this logical Aquarian energy. You're not going to be emotional at all. Your Sun Aquarius, you're not going to want to look emotional. You won't be very emotional, but because it's not your moon and it's only your sun and it's what you're striving to be, not what you already are innately within your core of your soul, you will accommodate people. So obviously, if they're really, really upset and emotional, you can become a little bit more emotional to comfort them and give them a shoulder to cry on and all that. Even though you're fixed as air and you are Aquarius sun, you can accommodate them and talk about emotions if you really are forced to and you have no other choice. Moon Aquarius, it is so dramatic and so deeply felt that even if someone's literally crying their eyes out to you and you have no choice but to be sympathetic and emotional with them, you will still not be. You will be completely emotionally aloof. Now, Mercury Aquarius, now it can be said that Mercury is comfortable in all air signs because they are logical thinkers, they're fast thinkers and intelligent and clever. So that is principles of Mercury. So obviously Mercury is happy in all air signs. So Mercury Aquarius, your manner of language and speech, your cognition style is going to be factual, it's going to state facts, and it's going to be entirely logical. It's going to be very objective, very, very logical. It's not going to have any hint of, obviously, as I say, emotion, because there is this whole theme of emotional detachment with the Aquarius sign. So you're going to be entirely logical and factual based with your language and your cognition. You're going to be impersonal too with that, and you're going to. It's a fairly comfortable placement, so you'll be quite natural with your cognition, but you will be very entirely logical, no hint of emotional connection at all, and you will be very impersonal and very non-judgmental. These are themes of Aquarius. So yeah, and then obviously, as I say, Aquarius rising, you're going to look very eccentric. You're going to look very unusual, strange. People describe you as weird if they're not such a nice or an open-minded or a respectful person towards you. But eccentric is a good word to describe. Aquarius rising is just going to have something about them. It's just going to look very strange, like very, very unusual and individualistic. They're going to be very sort of, maybe they want to dye their hair constantly, or they want to wear tattoos that are incredibly out of the ordinary. They're going to want to shock you. They're going to want to surprise you because it's Uranus sort of vibes. So Aquarius and Uranus would rule their first house if they have Aquarius rising. So yeah, they're going to look really, really strange. They're going to have something about them which is really eccentric and noticeable. And even if they're not trying to get attention, even their physical body might have something strange about it which gets attention, like maybe their eyes are huge, or their eyes are really small, or their nose looks weird, or something like that, or they have huge ears or something, you know what I'm saying? So that's what that. You're going to look very non-judgmental, very humanitarian, very fair-minded, and you're going to be looking very factual, very scientifically minded, and you're going to look incredibly emotionally detached with an Aquarius rising. But yeah, this video is super long, I'm sorry. I mean, I did preface at the start that it would be a very long video, but obviously all my videos are long. This is just taking it to a whole new level. But as I say, the next video, what Pisces character description video, I've got a whole page literally of notes written for that one. And this video was only like a half page of notes. So I'll warn you, obviously my sun sign's Pisces, so the next video coming up Pisces is definitely going to be the longest video so far, but even longer again than this one, but I hope you don't mind that. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next time, hopefully. Thanks.